I'm Glenn McGinnis, and this is Outburst. On this week's show, what would you like to see included in the speech from the throne?
The priority is getting people back to work.
I would be curious to see if they'll address the mental health and wellness of all Canadians.
A budget that is balanced.
I would like to see the seniors situation, those who are in long-term care, addressed, because that was a travesty.
When Parliament resumes soon, the first order of business before anything gets rolling is the speech from the throne, where the Governor-General stands up on behalf of the Queen and reads a speech written by the government which outlines their plans and priorities for the upcoming session. So when it comes down to those plans and priorities, what do you think should be on the list? Our question. What would you like to see included in the speech from the throne?
Speech from the throne, I think really critical is updates on certainly the pandemic and plans for going forward for recovery process, implications on other ministries of that. I really kind of think that's the focus right now.
A budget that is balanced and has a way, or at least a path forward to balancing the budget and trying to recover this deficit that has just been extreme.
Some kind of clarity coming forward out of COVID. I mean, I've lost my job due to it, and it's a terrifying thing at the moment, and a lot of unknown. That I know that they can't give you the exact answer, but some kind of direction as to where to next.
I hope he talks more about the economy and he pay more attention to West. Basically, we feel in the West that we have been ignored and nobody listened to us. Nobody listened to our needs. Nobody looked at the situation in Alberta, pipeline, and the oil and gas problems.
At times, Justin Trudeau seems to use more of a debating style with an expression that really says nothing. So I'd like it to be more forthright and less politically correct.
In the throne speech, I'd like to hear what he has to say about the current deficit and how he's going to address it. Ideally, he says he doesn't want to raise taxes, but the revenue's dried up, so it has to come from somewhere. We can't leave our $1 trillion, which it's going to be in the next couple of years, to our kids or grandkids.
A little bit of guidance on where we're headed, plus stop the spending.
More hope. Federal government dealing with homeless people and stuff like that, because I don't think they focus a lot on that. It's more left to the provincial and municipal governments to deal with that stuff. I think Trudeau tends to back off of a lot of certain topics.
So I think a basic income program, it's time, it's necessary. I think when something like this happens, you see the kind of the underbelly, right? We live downtown, so everything kind of bubbles up to the surface, starting when the washroom's closed all over then, right? And you're just seeing more and more and more. So I think we definitely need a basic income program, first and foremost.
The speech from the throne. Well, first of all, they should be condemned for proroguing Parliament and so forth. And they've set it up so that they're offering so much free money to people that it will be very awkward for the opposition to kick them out of office and have an election, because the people like freebies. They don't really believe they're going to have to pay for it down the road. And so I think they'll survive the throne speech and the budget, because the opposition can't really do things that are unpopular. So blame the voters. Don't blame the political parties. People should say, this is ridiculous. We're not going to vote for you just because you offered us $2,000, and we're going to have to pay it back later.
I would like to see the seniors situation, those who are in long-term care, addressed, because that was a travesty. And I don't know when, if my turn comes to be in that situation, but I have to think ahead. And I think as a government, as a people, as a community, we have to address this. And now that we know, we have seen the disasters. So you look backward and learn.
The priority is getting people back to work and getting the people who have been hit hard by the pandemic back in something sustainable. and at the same time taking measures to stop the spread of COVID-19. I know that's very general and vague. I don't necessarily know how you do those things, but that's really all I can say.
Is the wage thing going to become an issue, and is the NDP going to push that to accept the government and prevent, to accept the speech and prevent an election? Because they have no money, nor has the Bloc. The Conservatives, who knows? Who knows?
I think what should be included in that speech is just, because a lot of Canadians right now, I think we're really fearful about what's going to happen within the upcoming couple of months coming into the new year. I think that they should really put an emphasis on the plan that they have. Because, for instance, if you give the example with the CERB, nobody really knows what's going to happen to it. And as much as they've done a really good job, that's an area that they could have improved on, was just having a set plan.
I'd like to see the Parliament dissolved and have an election. That's my feeling. I think we need a change of Parliament very quickly after what's happened in the last year, especially. With especially Trudeau proroguing Parliament when he said he would never do it himself several years ago. All these scandals that have come up, and nothing's been resolved, and he deliberately prorogued Parliament in order to negate having to ask questions. All the wee controversy and everything else.
I would be curious to see if they'll address the mental health and wellness of all Canadians and whether or not that's going to make it to the speech, because as much as I think the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the Canadian economy, obviously a lot of people are out of work, businesses are shutting down, but I think it's also taking a serious toll on mental health and well-being.
The speech is going to be about what the government is going to do, but a lot of the time we've seen it time and time again. The government says one thing, but then does another, and then they change their mind, and then they add some things and they remove some things. I'm just gonna, keep talking. I'm just gonna watch and see how it actually pans out in the end.
Now that Erin O'Toole has settled into his new role as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and leader of the opposition, his next task is not only to win the support of Canadians, but also to unite Conservatives across the country. During the Conservative leadership campaign, O'Toole claimed he was the only true blue Conservative among the candidates. So, can this help him unify his party? Our question.
What must Erin O'Toole do to keep Conservatives united?
Well, first of all, he's from Ontario, which is, a rarity in terms of Conservative leadership of late. He's got to rally and he's got some possible allies in the provinces. A lot of them are Conservative. And then there's the West and Jason Kenney. He's got a lot of work to do.
Well, I think they need a strong leader, someone that appeals to the voters, because it seems like whether it's the United States or Canada, it's a popularity contest of who the leader is. And, he's not as well known as the other political figures, but, a strong showing in the election. He needs a strong majority so that the Conservatives can bring in some tough legislation to deal with this overspending.
That I'm not sure. Honestly, I'd never really heard of him before he showed up. And I haven't had a chance to kind of sit down and take a look.
I wouldn't know what he can do to unite their party. Their party's been in trouble for years, and I can't see it getting fixed anytime soon.
I think that they need to kind of put their egos aside and find a common ground. Because if you notice, whenever they're doing the debate, when Trudeau and Scheer did the debate, they seem to kind of attack the opposition more so than actually find the common ground. And instead of having, for instance, the Conservatives, when they deal with, finances, and then Liberals deal with rights, there has to be a way that they can come together instead of trying to bring the other down. It's with any leadership. If you keep doing that, if you attack them instead of find the common ground, you're not going to actually be a team. So I think they should do that.
I'm not really sure. I think he has to probably just appeal to as many people as he can and unite the various factions of the party, bring as many people into the tent as he can.
First of all, I'm not the biggest fan of conservatives to begin with. That being said, I think that he really just needs to sit down and, like they say in French, like mettre les points sur les i, les traits sur les traits. That just means like he has to keep it real. You know, conservatives don't seem to know what they really want, what they're really standing for. They're really being on shaky ground, so they really need to like set the foundation, and then decide like if we're going left or if we're going right. Because otherwise, you know, if you have a shaky foundation, you have a shaky house. And if you have a shaky house, it crumbles. And right now, they're looking really suspicious. That's all I'm going to say.
I think he just has to bring people in from all across the country, whether it be from BC, especially out west, because the west, is, to me, has been neglected for many years. Quebecers, obviously. People down east, it's terrible, the economy down there. So I think he just has to bring people in from all different areas of the country, because it's very important, obviously, to have a unified group in order to solve all the problems.
Well, it's going to be interesting because I don't really know a lot about him, and that seems to be, I think, the consensus with everybody. He's a very new person who's never really been in the spotlight, so it'll be interesting to hear what he has to really say and try to unite everybody.
I think he has to stay in the, center-leaning right, and not too far right, and try to be moderate, basically.
Yeah, he has to really just speak broadly to the entire, like all aspects of the Conservative Party, like, and Western alienation. Western alienation also. Just to try, there's been a lot of that out here, and just I know people have not been satisfied with the way transfer payments out in the West, anyways, has been working, and try to definitely not have Conservatives go away to the People's Party of Canada. So.
Well, my wife and I are just back from being gone 25 years from Canada. We're just 4 years back, and familiarized ourselves somewhat with the candidates that were running. But I like what Erin O'Toole said when he came on, and I happen to be neutral on the subject of abortion and Planned Parenthood. He said that he ran on a neutral platform, and he's not going to make that a central issue. And I think those issues that people stack up as that you must or must not do is debilitating for a Conservative government.
He has to think about more like up to date. He has to think. Conservatives have to adjust themselves to become more competitive. If they want to hold a government, so they have to listen to people on the margins. Basically, instead of moving more to right, they have to come more to center in order to be able to hold the government.
If you want to win Ontario and Quebec, you need to literally drop the social conservative platform and become a bit more, if it doesn't affect me, I don't care type of platform, like have that sort of attitude towards it.
Well, I think he still has to stick to his core roots of the Conservative Party. What I'd like to see from the Conservatives is not voting along party lines, but in voting more with what their constituents would like.
How many women were elected to Parliament in the 2019 federal election? 68, 78, or 98?
98.
I'm going to go with 78. 98 sounds like great answers. So 98.
I'm going to go with 78.
78.
68.
78?
Yeah, 78.
Well, I'm embarrassed to say I don't know the answer for sure, but I'm hoping it's 98 out of the 300 plus seats in the House of Commons.
It's 98.
Good.
You did well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The number of women elected to Parliament in the October 21st, 2019 federal election was 98. In contrast, 88 women were elected to Parliament in 2015. In total, the number of women who ran federally for all parties in 2019 was 646 nationwide. When the votes were counted, the breakdown of elected women MPs per party in the House of Commons were as follows: 52 for the Liberals, 22 for the Conservatives, 12 for the Bloc Québécois, 9 for the NDP, 2 for the Green Party of Canada, and 1 independent, setting a record for for female members elected to Parliament.
Throughout the pandemic, we've seen on almost a daily basis updates from the Prime Minister outlining what his government is doing to keep Canadians safe, informed, and financially secure, especially those who have lost their livelihoods because of COVID-19. We took to the streets to ask Canadians if they are satisfied with the job the Trudeau government has done. Our question:
How would you rate the federal government's performance during the pandemic?
I think overall it's been pretty good. Yeah, I think it's been well coordinated and the message has been pretty good, and communicating expectations to the public and how they should be behaving and things like that. So yeah, I think overall I think it's been pretty good.
By comparison, great. I think BC's done really well, personally. Love Dr. Henry, she's great.
Given the kind of a situation they're in, I think they've done very well. Yeah. And I think Dr. Bonnie Henry is doing a great job.
I'm not sure about federal government, but I'm just talking about the BC government is doing a fabulous job. And I think the method is being taken here is being praised by different, a lot of places, all over the world. So I'm just happy I'm here. So yeah.
I think it's done fairly well, considering everything that you have to think about. You have to think about people's health. You have to think about economics. I think that and when you look at the percentages per population, per million of people, it's done fairly well. So I think when I compare it to other countries, my own, it's really good.
I think they've done very well. Our numbers have been doing very good. But now, obviously, the numbers are going back up again. But I see that's the case with other countries as well, even in Asia, where the countries where the levels were down to 0. Like in South Korea, the other day was back up at 300 in one day. So, I don't know. We don't really know much about this pandemic and what we can do. Some people think they're doing the right thing, but their numbers are still going up. So, I think the way that our government's gone about it has been pretty good. Like, we've been pretty good role models for the rest of the world.
I think it's been pretty good. I really do. I think he's stepped up. I think he's really helped out as far as like people who were jobless or who had unemployment. Like cash was tight and he really stepped up.
Very high. I think they did the right thing. Yeah. It's very easy to second guess, but we were all in uncharted territory.
Pretty good. I was actually pretty impressed with Trudeau's speeches at the beginning. When he first started out, he was like full of confidence and everything, but as things progress, I don't, things are starting to go downhill, but no, he's doing pretty good. I wouldn't want to be a politician right now, I'll tell you that.
I'd say it's about a 4 out of 10.
Why?
Well, I think underneath some things were good, but just handing out money without really having any kind of checks and balances is really something that shouldn't be done, because we're going to really be paying for all this down the road, and we're going to need every dollar we can get together in order to keep the economy going, because I don't think it's going to get any better for quite a while.
Like compared to other countries, we could definitely do better compared to other countries and how they're handling the situation. But I think it's also very hard for us, considering the fact that we are from sea to sea. There's a lot more land to cover. Other countries are usually have smaller geographic areas, so it's easier for them to condense that energy. So they could do better, but I'm not necessarily telling them they're the bad guys in this situation. That's how I'm gonna say on that.
I think that the government during the pandemic did an absolute amazing job. For what they were given, for the amount of time, the time frame, there's a lot of people that could have suffered. There's a lot of people that actually could have, lost their homes, lost their mortgages, their vehicles, everything. But I think the government really did step up in that regard, because they saved more people than not. And they're going to continue to do that, and that part I'm confident with.
Is there a scale? I'd say 9 out of 10. Yeah. Why? Well, he's looked after some of the most vulnerable population, so I think that's a credit to Trudeau and the government.
Personally, I think they've done quite a good job so far.
Overall, I think, we've been able to really flatten the curve, which is obviously the goal, and we've been able to avoid, a lot of serious issues, I think.
The only thing I've seen is basically throwing money at things, which is fine. You got to help people out, but other than that, I haven't really seen much. I mean, we're 6 months into this, and I mean, even the ventilators, our PP&E, we've got very little in 6 months. It's unbelievable, in my opinion.
I give them about 75 to 80%. Yeah. Well, I think Trudeau acted pretty quickly on issues. There will be some debate about that, I'm sure, but yeah, I like this performance.
You can't be an armchair quarterback in a situation like that. I would say I'd give them a B, but I mean, I think there's other things they could improve on, But overall, I think we're all doing our best.
Oh, I would certainly rate it very high, actually, especially for the Atlantic region and right across the country. They've certainly come to the post and that kind of a thing, and especially with the Prime Minister, with his speakings every day, I think it brought the whole country together to realise where we stood.
I found that reassuring that every day you knew he was going to come out and talk to the people about what was happening. I found that reassuring.
When Parliament finally does get underway, many issues will be discussed and debated by all parties. But what those issues are, or what they should be, could vary, depending on who you talk to. Once again, we reached out to Canadians to ask them what concerns they would like to see addressed straight away. Our question:
what should be the first order of business when Parliament resumes?
Honestly, COVID-19 has forced all the nitty-gritty issues of society out of wherever they were hiding, whatever politicians were trying to dodge bullets, avoid questions. I think really what they should be focusing on is definitely healthcare in Canada, first off. Second of all, racism in Canada. Third of all, education in Canada, because nobody seems to be agreeing on what to do exactly. But I understand that education is a provincial jurisdiction and the provinces have to decide on that. But the fact that the leader of the country doesn't want to say if their own child is going to be going back to school, and then they want us to trust our provinces, is also very sketchy. So those are the few things that they should really be focusing on.
Homelessness is a huge problem. People going without eating, they should definitely get more funding in there because it's just not fair. And I mean, yes, with COVID-19, it's been really bad. I mean, it was a global pandemic, but at the same time, you have veterans that are starving on the street, and they're the ones that serve the country, but then they're paying the worst. So they should definitely take a look at the homelessness in there first.
To get the economy straightened out, because it's going to be very serious, I think, after what's happened, and I think that we have to have some definite new ideas on how to solve the economy. Because it's, as you can see along the street here, there's a lot of people that have no work and no place to stay, and so I think it's a real crisis.
How about, I would love to see Justin Trudeau tackle, he's been talking about how he was going to end the access to water on First Nations reserves. There are still places with boiling water advisories. He said he was going to end that within a certain number of days. I think there's only 100 or so days left on his timeline that he gave originally when he ran for re-election. That is what I want. First order of business.
Let's see, the coronavirus, well, I guess this wee business, I seem to be everybody's attention, so I say deal with the coronavirus, deal with what needs to be done and get it done. It may cause people to lose their seats, but we want things done properly and no proroguing Parliament, something to escape. I'm very disappointed in the Parliament prorogued. Absolutely disappointed.
I guess where we stand financially, we already know that pretty much, but I guess how we're going to go forward, how are we going to deal with the U.S. border, and how are we going to get people in jobs? We can't keep producing money out of the backyard, and something has to happen there. And like we've said, if the U.S. doesn't soon come to grips with what's happening down there, a lot of things can't go forward. Our hospitality industry is suffering so much everywhere, here, there, and everywhere. And you can't travel because of the U.S. So to me, that is the biggest thing they got to start dealing with, is trying to get them down there to do something, you know, at least come out and say something to make them see the light. But I don't know if that's enough, if that can even happen. I don't know.
I guess we're going to have to work on the coronavirus, figuring out the proper process to, like I said, convalescent plasma, vaccines, medicines that work. Pour as much money into that as you can. And then the second thing would be to, like I said, open the borders, figure out a way to safely open the borders, and help the small businesses and businesses that have been hurt. I guess we're going to have to maybe spend even more money.
Probably get the economy going, things like that.
Honestly, I'm not really sure. I mean, obviously COVID is top center. We got to do something about the spending that's going on. We got to get the budget under control. It's fine to be spending now, but it's eventually got to be paid back. So that's got to be looked at for sure.
When they resume, I think really it should be assessing what the new normal should be and making sure that everyone is very much aware of the current policies that have been in place and that will be in place going forward, just to kind of ease the minds of those who are currently worried about the pandemic.
First order of business. I think getting things back on track as much as they can be in terms of how the pandemic is progressing or regressing. First order of business, well, the economy I would be right up there. Getting children safely back to school, looking at the borders again.
And a lot of the businesses are suffering, business owners, because their employees don't want to go back to work because they're depending on the CERB. So I feel like that's affecting our economy very negatively.
I guess get back to the business of the economy and making sure we're handling the COVID situation properly, so it's not continuing to impact our economy too much. I mean, that's a big concern for a lot of people. So I think that's definitely priority one right now.
I think we need a clear financial path. I think that's what most people are hoping for. Yeah, it's been too much upheaval.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on the Cable Public Affairs channel. I'm Glenn McGuinness. If you have any comments or questions about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website, www.cpac.ca. It's your turn to speak up, and we're listening.